Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Now feels like a good time to kind of get you updated on everything that has really happened over the last 3 weeks and update my way too early top 25 from the end of the season. We all know how way too early top 25s work. The day after the season ends, really the night of the national championship game, in this case, Kansas, North Carolina. It was only 3 weeks ago. It feels like it was like 6 months ago. It was only 3 weeks ago that Kansas plays North Carolina for the national championship, and that night I put out my way too early top 25 for 2022-2023. Well, since then, we've had players declare for the draft, decide whether they're going to stay, whether they're going to go, whether they're going to test the waters. Again, many players are testing the waters and could ultimately come back. But we also have a bunch of transfers. We have some new high school commitments. And so with that, I thought today would be a great day to update the way too early top 25 for 2022-2023, get you updated on some of the big-name schools that have made major additions, big-name schools that have added transfers, big-name schools that have maybe lost an unexpected player or two to the NBA draft, and just recalibrate where we are in college basketball. And then when the official draft deadline ends in May and we know for sure who's definitively coming back and who is definitively going pro, we will then at that point redo this for a third time and get you the updated way too early top 25 once the NBA draft decisions are official. But again, Sunday night was the day that you had to declare by to go through the process. Some guys are definitively leaving. A lot of guys are testing the waters. Feels like a good day to recalibrate. First, before we get into the updated top 25, let me give you the top 10 the night that the national championship game ended. I had Arkansas 1, Kansas 2, UCLA 3, Gonzaga 4, Arizona 5, Houston 6, Duke 7, Creighton 8, Tennessee 9, and Kentucky 10. One team that was notably missing from that top 10, let's get into the new top 25 and a new number one, as I told you a minute ago. The North Carolina Tar Heels are officially my new number one coming into this season. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, wait a second now, Torres. Wait a second now. You didn't even have North Carolina in your top 10 to end the season? What's wrong with you? You're crazy. How did they go from out of the top 10 to number one? Well, the answer is pretty straightforward. I didn't think Caleb Love and Armando Bacot were coming back. I know I've spent the last 3 weeks talking about NIL and the impact that it's having and guys deciding to come back and play another year of college basketball. But coming off that NCAA tournament, Armando Bacot almost left last year. Caleb Love felt like he was a one and done. And so I thought for sure, after both of them had great NCAA tournaments, that they were both going to leave college basketball. Well, now those two come back. And in addition, as I said last segment, RJ Davis, the third leading scorer, Leaky Black, a fourth starter, are all returning to Carolina, in addition to Puff Johnson, in addition to Kerwin Walton, a couple really good role players on this year's team. Now, they're not perfect. It's not an indisputable number one, and it doesn't mean that other teams can't surpass them by the end of the summer. They do need a stretch four to replace Brady Manek. If you remember Brady Manek, the big white kid, long hair, big beard, he was awesome in the NCAA tournament, and that is a big hole to fill. But I still feel like when you have four starters that are coming back, four starters that are essentially a core that has been together for 3 years, this feels like the team that should be number one to me. I just explained why, yes, they were an 8 seed, but at the same time, they were 13-3 down the stretch, were playing really well. North Carolina is my new number one in my way too early top 25. At number 2, drum roll please, it's the Arkansas Razorbacks. They fall all the way from number 1 to number 2. And in typical Coach Muss fashion, this is a team that looks different even than when I put them at number 1 to end when the season was over the night of the national championship game. We knew J.D. Notae was gone at that time. Since then, Jalen Williams has declared for the draft. I still have him returning, but I do think it's becoming increasingly uncertain if he's going to come back. On the one hand, he put out a video last week. It kind of made it feel like, okay, maybe he's coming back. On the other hand, you just look at the simple scholarship numbers, and right now they're over the scholarship limit. He is going to get real NBA interest, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with Jalen Williams in these coming weeks. With that said, I still love this Arkansas team, and I love what they've done even since the last time I recorded. One, Trevon Brazile, a transfer from Missouri, had already committed. They have since added 3 transfers. The Mitchell twins, Mekhi and Mikal Mitchell, who played at Rhode Island, and Jalen Graham, an all Pac-12 forward from Arizona State. And those are important pieces for this reason. Couple things, really. One, I mentioned this when the Mitchell twins committed, but Eric Musselman, I've been around his programs, and I know his programs long enough to know that when something beats Coach Muss, at any point, but especially in the NCAA tournament to end the season, he is going to evaluate what went wrong and how do we fix that next year. Well, if you remember that Duke game against Duke, Mark Williams, the big 7-footer, Arkansas had no answer for him because basically nobody in college basketball had an answer for him all year. So I love that they added the Mitchell twins down low. They're adding rim protection, shot blocking, rebounding. And then Jalen Graham, he's not a great three-point shooter, but he's good about 15 feet in. And as I said, he was an all Pac-12 forward at Arizona State. Trevon Brazile, the kid from Missouri that I mentioned, I know for a fact that a lot of people wanted that kid. A lot of people really liked that kid. And now it turns out that Arkansas has gotten him, and Arkansas is I think he's going to be a key piece, especially if Jalen Williams does decide to stay in the NBA draft. We'll wait on Jalen Williams. 3 new transfers since I recorded. And oh, by the way, the number 2 recruiting class in the country, which I've talked about at length on this show. I've talked about Anthony Black, the big point guard. I've talked about Nick Smith, who might be the first player taken American-born next year. There's a big international kid that everybody likes, but Nick Smith Jr. could be the number 2, number 3 pick in the draft. He's headed to Arkansas. Jordan Walsh, another guy that's just a super explosive athlete. I have Arkansas at number 2. At number 3, I have Kansas. And Kansas is an interesting one because, as expected, Ochai Agbaji, star player declared, as did their big man David McCormick, who essentially won them the tournament late, 2 big buckets late to seal the victory over North Carolina in the championship game. They also had their next best player, Christian Brown. He has declared for the draft without an agent. Right now, I do have Christian Brown coming back, and if he comes back, that means 3 starters are returning, in addition to 3 McDonald's All-Americans that will be enrolling this coming fall. At the end of the day, you give me 3 starters with 3 McDonald's All-Americans, and you know Bill Self is going to grab a player or 2 out of the portal? I like that team in the top 5 going into next year. Yes, they lost pieces, but this is Bill Self. And listen, we can criticize Bill Self all we want for the FBI stuff. NCAA sanctions may be coming. I think with Jay Wright out, he's the best coach in college basketball. This was a guy this year without a consensus 5-star recruit that just won the Big 12 regular season, won the Big 12 tournament, and won a national championship. If Bill Self gets all of these guys back, they are number 3. They are right in the mix for another national championship next year, although, of course, the big question will be, will they be eligible, as NCAA sanctions could be looming. Number 4, another controversial one that you guys aren't going to like. I do have Gonzaga at number 4, and it's for this reason. If they get Drew Timme back, then they are going to win a lot of games. They're going to beat a lot of really good teams, and they're going to be in position to once again get a number 1 seed. I know you guys don't like it. I understand that at a certain point they got to win a national championship to justify all of these number 1 seeds that they're getting. But at the end of the day, here's what's going on at Gonzaga. They are going to lose their starting point guard, Andrew Nembhard. They are going to lose Chet Holmgren, obviously, who could be the number 1 pick in the draft. But Drew Timme is an automatic 20-10 if he comes back to college basketball. Their young guards are improved. Hunter Salas was a former McDonald's All-American. Nolan Hickman, a former top 30 recruit that was committed to Kentucky before he goes to Gonzaga. They're both back. Julian Strother, a wing who has declared and tested for the NBA draft but could return. That guy also is a difference maker. I think he could be kind of that next great developmental player at Gonzaga. Also worth noting a couple other things on Gonzaga. One, really talented guard, Dominic Harris. They lost him this season to a season-ending injury before the season started. I think he has a chance to be really good. They're going to get somebody out of the portal. And the other thing worth considering with Gonzaga, they're one of the few teams that, as I record right now, they did not lose a single player to the transfer portal. I think this team is coming back. This team is coming back intact. They're experienced. They've played a lot together. Now, again, I get it. They got to win the national championship to justify a ranking like this, or to justify us hyping them in the preseason. But this is a team that in normal seasons, they're going to win 30 games. They're going to get to the Sweet 16. And then from there, it becomes, can they win the national championship? I have Gonzaga at number 4. Number 5, I have UCLA, and I talked about UCLA a lot on the last episode because in the previous weeks, the previous days, they lost Johnny Juzang, obviously their star of their Final Four run last year. But they also got back Jaime Jaquez, their second leading scorer and rebounder from a season ago. They're also adding a bunch of five-star recruits, Amari Bailey, and they're adding Adem Bona, the big guy down low as well. And so to me, when I look at this team, and I said it last episode, and it was a little controversial, I don't want to say they're going to be better without Johnny Juzang, but I do think they're not going to miss as much of a beat as people would expect losing a star player like that. I talked to somebody who knows this roster well, who knows a lot of these players. He agreed with me. I talked to him late last week. What he told me was, look, the bottom line is it's exactly what I just said. When you look at this group, when you look at this roster, what I see is this. I see a team that Johnny Juzang, as great as he was a ball stopper. He catches the ball. He's going to do his 2 dribbles, and he's going to pump fake. He's going to pass. He's going to shoot. He's going to do whatever. Without him, I believe that the spacing and the ball movement will be much better, and I think you're adding an instant impact freshman in Amari Bailey. And I talked about him late last week. Obviously, he's well known, unfortunately, because of his mom, but this dude's a hooper. And in talking to the guy that I spoke with late last week who knows this program well, he said Amari Bailey, because he's so hyped, we think of him as this, is that he's a great kid. And the thing about Amari Bailey, and you can see this just watching film, the kid loves to pass. The kid loves to get other people involved. And so when you're starting to talk about a guy that could have an instant impact on college basketball right away, Tiger Campbell, the starting point guard's back. Amari Bailey is a playmaker off the ball. You're more athletic down low with Adem Bona. Miles Johnson could come back. I really do like UCLA. Now, they still have a couple pieces that are either testing the waters or are unsure what they're going to do, all that good stuff. But I'm just telling you, I really like this roster. I don't think there's anyone necessarily at this point that could come back that would elevate them further. This is probably the ceiling. They may be a little bit lower. But I think this is a team, remember, again, as I said a minute ago, they were a stop or 2 away from going to an Elite 8 where they would have played St. Peter's to go to a second straight Final Four. Mick Cronin, it's incredible what he's done with this program in a short amount of time. UCLA, number 5. Number 6, I have them higher than anybody else right now, but I do have Arizona at number 6. And the bottom line is nothing has really happened that is unexpected so far. Ben Mathurin, their star, has declared for the draft. Christian Koloko, really athletic, tall, lanky, big guy who really filled out, had a great year. He declared. But right now, 4 of their top, really three of their top, let me take this back, okay? 3 of their starters and 4 of their top 6 could return. Now, I said it the day after the season, and it stands true today. They have a guard named Dalen Terry who was awesome the back half of the season. He has declared for the draft and is testing and could return, or he could ultimately end up declaring for the draft. He is a big guard, I should say, about 6'7". He quote-unquote only averaged 8 and 5 this season, but the final couple games of the season, he was the only one that showed up to play Houston, 17.6 rebounds, 3 assists. In the NCAA tournament opener, 16.7 rebounds, 4 assists. Pac-12 championship game with no Kirk Kriisa, 15.7 rebounds, 7 assists. Emerged late, has NBA size, length, and measurables. When he tests the waters, I think he's going to impress a lot of NBA teams. It's just a matter of whether he wants to come back or not. If he comes back, Arizona is back in the top 10 and a team good enough to again compete for a national championship. If he does decide to stay in the draft, then we're probably looking at Arizona realistically as a top 20-ish team, but they are not a top 10 team going forward. Number 7, the Houston Cougars. Very interesting team. I'll say this with Houston. They're interesting for this reason. One, I love Kelvin Sampson. You guys know how I feel about Kelvin Sampson, and what I would say about Houston is they're going to be in the top 10. Where I am kind of getting tripped up right now, it's a weird deal. As I told you all season long, they lost their top 2 players to season-ending injuries, Marcus Sasser and Tremont Mark. Well, here's the thing. Those 2 guys are back, as is their starting point guard, Jamal Shed, where Houston is actually kind of thin right now is in the front court. They have a freshman McDonald's All-American named Jarris Walker coming in, but they actually probably need to add a body or 2 up front. Now, I believe Kelvin Sampson will do it. They are the leader in the clubhouse, reportedly, for Kenneth Lofton Jr., no relation to the baseball player, who was a double-double machine at Louisiana Tech this year. But weirdly, Houston may not be big enough down low. They're a size, they're a physical toughness team in the paint. They need to add another body or 2. So I have Houston at number 7. I've seen them as high as number 2, number 3 in some other people's polls. And I believe as long as they get another body or 2, I could see them in the top 5 to start the season. Houston, number 7. Number 8 is Kentucky. And what I'll say about Kentucky is this. I had them at number 10 coming out of the season, and that was with Oscar Tshiebwe returning. So you're probably sitting there saying, Torres, if you had all the pieces kind of happened as you thought they would, why are you projecting them to be in the top 10? if you or number 8 if you had them at number 10 to end the season. I think at the end of the day, I was probably just too difficult on Kentucky because of that St. Peter's loss. But now you're returning Severe Wheeler, who is a really good point guard. You're returning Oscar Tshiebwe, the National Player of the Year. That is a really, really good place to start. Now, the pieces around them still are kind of getting sorted out. C.J. Frederick, a sharpshooting point guard, he was unable to play this year, season-ending injury. So I do think that Kentucky probably does need to add one more kind of wing player. They've been in the mix for this kid, Antonio Reeves, who played at Illinois State. But they do have coming back C.J. Frederick healthy. They do have 2 McDonald's All-Americans, Chris Livingston and Cason Wallace, coming in. And I really do like this core. And it's like I said with Oscar Tshiebwe last week when he came back. Once he officially announced he's coming back, Kentucky has all the pieces to listen. With Oscar Tshiebwe, this is what I should say. I don't want to say they have all the pieces because some of the pieces you don't love. But with Oscar Tshiebwe back, that puts you in the mix. And right now, all you can ask to be in the mix. The other thing with Kentucky as well, this Shaedon Sharpe deal is wild. I still think he ultimately gets declared eligible for the NBA draft, but there's increasing buzz that the NBA is getting pushed back from the players' union and from the agents. Basically the agent. It's a long story, but there's increasing buzz that Shaedon Sharpe might not be eligible for this draft. I'll believe it when I see it, but I do have Kentucky at number 8. Again, you have Oscar Tshiebwe. It keeps you in the mix against anybody. I do still think there may be a piece or two away, especially on the wing. Number 9. Maybe the most interesting team in the country next year. How about them Duke Blue Devils? So not sure if you heard, Coach K, no longer part of the Duke family. I mean, he's part of the family, but he ain't there no more. The Brotherhood, the father of the Brotherhood, is out the door. John Shire is in. And what's interesting is they really only returned one marquee player from that Final Four run. That was their point guard, Jeremy Roach, who played really well down the stretch. The rest of the team is entirely freshmen, but the question becomes, I don't want to say by far, but they have the best freshman class in the country with 4 of the top 13 players committed. Kyle Filipowski, a big stretch 4. Derek Lively, a true 7'1", 7'2" center that blocks everything in sight. Dariq Whitehead, a solid wing, and Mark Mitchell, a solid wing. And so with Duke, it comes down to a team almost entirely full of freshmen, coached by a first-year head coach. What do you do with them? They are going to have the number 1 recruiting class. They're going to have the most first-round draft picks next year, I can say with almost certainty at this point. But they also have a first-year head coach, and they're all freshmen, so I put them at number 9. Duke is at number 9. Number 10 is Creighton. Creighton's a really interesting team. They bring back basically everybody off of a team that went to the Big East championship game where they lost to Villanova, and then on top of that, beat San Diego State in round 1. They played Kansas tougher than a lot of teams did in that NCAA tournament. Easily could have beaten Kansas, and they were down 2 starters in that game. They're starting point guard Ryan Nembhard. They're starting center Ryan Kalkbrenner. Well, both those guys are coming back. Both those guys will be healthy for the start of the season, or at least the midway point of the season. They also have a kid, Arthur Kaluma, who, I think if he had declared for the draft, was a kid that maybe could have been in the mix to be a potential first-round pick. He's going to come back. That guy could be a breakout star in college basketball next year. They also have Sharif Mitchell, another guard coming back from injury. They had Trey Alexander, who played really well as a freshman last year. I really like this Creighton team. They come in at number 10. So that is my updated top 10. I just said it, but I'll repeat it for you. Number 1, new number 1 is North Carolina. Number 2 is Arkansas. Number 3 is Kansas. Number 4 is Gonzaga. Number 5 is UCLA. 6 is Arizona. 7 is Houston. 8 is Kentucky. 9 is Duke. 10 is Creighton. Let's quickly rip through the rest of the top 25 updated. I won't go through every team. I'll try to give you teams that have changed or evolved since the last updated top 25. 11, Tennessee, not really much to report. They lose Brandon Huntley Hatfield, a 7-footer who played sparingly for them. They add a guard named Tyreek Key, but they bring back Sakai Ziegler. They bring back Josiah James, and Santiago Vescovi is testing the waters, but I expect him back. Baylor has added a couple transfers. They are at number 12. Number 13, I'll tell you, Michigan is a big riser in my way too early top 25 because they got back Hunter Dickinson. And so I didn't talk about him in the Caleb Love segment of this show, but Hunter Dickinson is an All-American caliber player, and he is another guy that the NIL stuff really did matter here. I had Hunter Dickinson on this show in the preseason, my preseason National Player of the Year, and he basically said, I came back for one more year at Michigan. We're going to see what happens. Then NIL kicks in. I don't know what he's making, but he's at a huge brand with big boosters. Obviously, Jordan Brand represents, Michigan, so probably if Michigan needs money, they can get him from there. But that guy averaged 19 and 9, and I really just do like the pieces around him. The point guard, Frankie Collins, really emerged late. I have Michigan at number 13. They are a big riser. In my original way too early top 25, I had them at number 23 without Hunter Dickinson. They are up to number 13 now in my updated top 25. I actually had them at number 22, but who's counting? Number 14, another big riser, the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I know Alabama wasn't very good down the stretch last year, but a couple things happened with them why I like them. One, when I did my original top 25, I did not think Javon Quinterly, their starting point guard this year, was going to come back. He got hurt in the NCAA tournament. He put out a statement that said, I can't believe this is, or a tweet that said, I can't believe this is how my college career ends. Well, a couple weeks pass. He's not going to be able to play next year, or he's not going to be able to go through the NBA draft process, so he decides to come back. Alabama also adds a really impact wing player guard in the portal, Mark Sears. They have the number 3 recruiting class coming in, including 2 McDonald's All-Americans, Brandon Miller and Jaden Bradley. And the X factor could be this. Last offseason, they got a transfer named Namari Burnett, former McDonald's All-American. And you talk to people around that program, they'll tell you, he was the guy that we needed this year. We needed one more scorer on the wing. We didn't have it. He was out with an ACL injury. I have Alabama along with North Carolina and Michigan. Those are my big risers in my way too early top 25. Alabama at number 14. UConn number 15. And I'll try to be quick here because I talked about UConn, but UConn, 2 marquee transfers are added. Naheem Alim, who is from Virginia Tech, 38% three-point shooter, and Tristan Newton, I talked about a few weeks ago, 18-5-5 at East Carolina. UConn has now really, you add those two with Andre Jackson, a wing who has NBA size and athleticism, Jordan Hawkins, who is a potential NBA player, I believe, can shoot the you-know-what out of the ball, just needs more time and experience, and Adama Sanogo, all Big East center down low. That is a dominant starting 5. Now, you'd love to get another piece or two out of the transfer portal. I will say they have 2 young players that I really like. Alex Caravan, a redshirt freshman. I'm excited to see him. Donovan Klingland, a player from the state of Connecticut, 7-footer. Really excited to see those 2. I like UConn more than most. And it's not a homer thing. I just think they're going to be smaller. They're going to be more athletic, but they're going to still have that post presence with Adama Sanogo. I have UConn at 15. Number 16, another fascinating one. What do you do with Villanova? On the one hand, Brandon Slater, one of their star players from their Final Four run, was banged up middle of the year, played well late. He is back. You also have Eric Dixon back, Jordan Longino, who played well late. He's coming back. Cam Whitmore, McDonald's All-American. He's enrolling. You also lost the best coach in college basketball in Jay Wright. And you also lost Colin Gillespie and Jermaine Samuels, 2 guys that have been around forever. So I put this team at number 16. I'm going to reevaluate as time goes on, but I do like this Villanova team, but I just don't know what to do with them. How high can you put a team that just lost maybe the best coach in college basketball? A lot of respect for Kyle Neptune, but I just don't know what to do with them. I'll try to rip through the rest really quickly. Auburn at number 17. No real big hot takes on Auburn. I think the guards were probably a little bit, we were too tough on the guards. They all come back. Added a 5-star center, 5-star big guy down low, Johan Traore, who was committed to LSU. He ends up at Auburn. Number 18, Sean Miller and the Xavier Musketeers. They win the NIT, bring back basically everybody. They're obviously going to be better coached than they were under Travis Steele. I really like Xavier at number 18. Number 19, Michigan State's a little bit of a faller. They really don't have any big guys right now, although I do think their guards are probably better than people realize. Number 20, Texas A&M. Should have been in the NCAA tournament, make a run to the NIT championship game. That is a team that I think is going to be vastly improved. There are only 2 new teams since I did my initial top 25. 21 is Virginia. And I know it's Virginia, and I know they're super boring, and I know we don't like to talk about them, and I know there's just not much to say about Virginia. But at the same time, when it comes to Virginia, they returned all 5 starters. They picked up a big-time transfer named Ben Vanderplas. Really talented, big guy, kind of a perfect guy for them. He passes the ball, he can handle, he can do all that. Virginia at 21. Colorado State at 22 return their top 4 scorers from what was a 6 seed last year. One of the guys, David Roddy, the Mountain West Player of the Year, is declaring. We'll see what happens with him. Number 23, the only other new team since my original top 25. How about my boy Mike Effin Woodson? Mike Effin Woodson, Indiana, in at number 23. Trace Jackson Davis, their star big guy, has declared if he comes back, Indiana's going to be in the top 20 and maybe the favorite in the Big Ten. Number 24, Marquette. Justin Lewis, I believe, is back. I saw an announcement, but it was weird. It doesn't seem as though it's official, but if he comes back there in the top 25. And number 25 is Texas Tech. I just believe in Mark Adams.